Welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I am going to show you how to create the Snow Lady artwork. The artwork is based on a drawing submitted by Happy Angel Drawings. Happy Angel had entered my 2019 Draw It Win It contest, and while she didn't win, the drawing was so cute I couldn't pass it up. So let's get burning. The ornate border. I am burning on a piece of die-cut birch plywood that has an ornate border. I purchased it at a craft store. I began by burning a line around the board to create a frame. Then I burned over the ornate border to give it a finished or polished look. After I got a bit of the background done, I decided that I wanted more contrast between the artwork and the border. So I used a mini torch and burned over the ornate border. This quickly turned it to a very dark brown or black color. It also created a lot of carbon that I cleaned off by wiping over it numerous times with a clean paper towel. The background. Use a writer pen tip and burn in the trace lines. Once you are done, rub over the area with a standard pencil eraser to remove any residual graphite. Then use a metal pick or other embossing tool to create deep holes or divots into the background. This will represent falling snow. Use the shader of your choice and burn the background to a uniform color. Use the flat of the shader to get wider burn strokes that will cover more surface area. I am using uniform strokes as my burn method. It is up to you on how dark you make the background. The darker the color, the more the snowflakes will stand out. I chose to burn my background to a light brown color. The reason is that the Snow Lady is going to be very pale. I didn't want the subtle shading that she will have to get washed out because of a really dark background. As I burn in the background, I work in small sections at a time. I slightly overlap the burn strokes to keep the color as smooth looking as possible. Since I am burning on plywood, it is not going to be 100% perfectly uniform looking, but that's okay, it'll be close enough. Another thing that helps achieve smooth, uniform color is to burn with the grain line on the wood. This particular board I'm burning on has a vertical grain line, so the direction I'm burning in is perfect for it. If you have more than one shader, I recommend using the one that fits the space. For example, in large open areas, I use a larger shader. In smaller areas, I often switch to a smaller shader to reduce the risk of burning past the lines. I darkened up the sky next to the snow-covered ground. This was done just to increase the contrast between the sky and the snow. I did not extend the darker color very far. The face and hat. Use a writer pen tip and burn along the eyelashes and outer edges of the left eye. Then burn around the highlights on the eye. Make the color a dark brown to black in tonal value. Next, burn in the nose, making it the same color as the eyes. Burn in the right eye following the same steps that we used on the left eye. Make sure to avoid burning over the highlights. Then burn in the eyebrows. I burned mine to a medium brown color, but it is your choice on how dark you make your eyebrows. Burn a really dark line just under the hat to create a small cast shadow. Then switch to a shader pen tip and burn in the upper portion of the eye so that it is a dark brown to black color. If needed, use the edge of a sharp knife to remove any overburn from the highlights on the eye. Burn along the inside of the hat on the right side. Keep the outer edge pale in color. Then burn the same area on the left side. Afterwards, burn along the outer edge on the top of the hat. Make the color pretty dark, say something between medium and dark brown. I am now scraping the color from the outer edge of the hat where I burned it and shouldn't have. Then I reburned over the inner portion of the hat to darken it up. With my mistake fixed, I resumed burning a dark band of color along the outer edge of the hat. Once done, rotate the board so your pen tip stays in optimal position and burn darkly next to the white fluff border on the hat. Also, reburn over the lines on the hat so that they are dark in color too. The next thing we will do is burn short pull-away strokes along the lower edge of the hat. Start the stroke on the dark line and pull it towards the opposite side of the hat. Stop the stroke a short distance from the starting point. I will mention that it is a lot easier to do pull-away strokes if you are pulling the pen tip towards yourself versus pushing it away from yourself like I am doing. So I highly recommend rotating the board when burning along this edge. I have not done so because the board that I'm burning on has that ornate border and the top comes to a rounded point, making it difficult to keep the board vertical. Now burn pull-away strokes along the upper edge, and then fill the area between the two edges with longer pull-away strokes or uniform strokes. All of the burn strokes do not need to match in color. A little variety would be good. Once we are done, our hat will have dark edges that gets gradually lighter in the center of the hat. This will give the hat a curved or rounded appearance. Now let's contour the face. Use circular motion and start on the outer corner of the right eye. Burn to the outer edge of the right side of the face. Then burn along the hat, working your way towards the outer edge of the left eye. Keep the color in the tan range as we are working on snow. I chose circular motion as my burn method because I wanted soft shading that did not have clearly defined edges where it starts and stops. Now burn just above the eye and around the upper eyelid. I decided that the upper boundary for the eyelid was this small, faint line that an arrow is pointing to. Repeat the process on the right eye and make sure to extend the color to the inner corner of the eye. As I said before, I am using circular motion as my main burn method, but I also use some uniform strokes. Now burn along the bottom edge of the face. When you get to the nose, extend the color up towards the bottom of the nose. Then continue along the bottom of the face until you reach the left edge of it. Next, burn from the inner corner of the eye to the side of the nose. Afterwards, do any fine-tuning if needed, and lightly burn over the forehead. Use a writer pen tip and reburn over the eye creases. I decided to make the left eyebrow larger in size. Use a shader and burn a thick band of color above each line on the puffball. You can also burn in some random spots of color here and there. I am using circular motion and some uniform strokes for this. Keep the color in the tan range. Then reburn over the lines using the flat of the shader to darken up the color around them. Do the same steps on the right puffball. Begin with the wide bands of color burned above each line using circular motion and some uniform strokes. Finish by reburning along the lines to darken them up. Next, burn tan-colored small spots here and there on the little puffballs. I am using circular motion and just holding the pen tip in place for a very brief moment. Lastly, do any fine-tuning if needed. I darkened up under the nose and along the area from the inner eye to the side of the nose. The body, mittens, and scarf. Use a shader pen tip and burn in the palm and thumb area on the mittens. Make the seam, where the palm and finger area touch, the darkest spot. An arrow is marking the seam line I'm talking about. Also, decrease the color anywhere the mitten overlaps onto the scarf. With the left mitten, that would be the upper edge on the palm, and the thumb on the right mitten. Then fill the finger area with a light brown color. You only need color next to the seam. Rotate the board and burn darkly along the outer edge of the finger area. Next, burn pull-away strokes along the outer edge of the finger area. Start the stroke on the edge and pull it towards the palm. Stop the burn stroke a little ways before reaching the seam line. We are going to burn the scarf using the same methods that we did with the hat. Burn a dark line around the edges of the scarf. Then burn pull-away strokes along the upper and lower edges of the scarf. Avoid burning over the little label on the lower right side. Burn over the lines on the scarf. And lastly, fill in the scarf with either longer pull-away strokes, uniform strokes, or the burn method of your preference. Rotate the board as needed while you work. Darken up the snow adjacent to the snow lady and burn a wide band of dark tan color along the bottom edge of her body. Rotate the board and burn a dark tan band of color above the arm. Since the board is rotated, it looks like we're burning below the arm. Now burn a similar band of color underneath the arm. Also, burn in the area from the scarf down to the top edge of the arm. We are helping the arm stand out. Next, burn in the right arm. Leave the upper edge unburned or very pale in color. Make the lower edge several shades lighter than the shadow below it. Basically, the center of the arm will be darker than the edges. Work your way down the side of the body. Continue along the bottom of the body and then up to the left arm. The left arm will get the same treatment as the right arm. Leave the outer edges along the sides of the body pale in color. The reason is that it will provide contrast with the sky and the adjacent shadows on the snow. I am using a combination of circular motion and uniform strokes as my burn methods. If needed, darken up the shadow under the arms. And darken up a wide area just below the center of the arm. This will help give the arms a rounded appearance. Switch to a writer pen tip and create a thin, darker shadow under the arms. I am using circular motion for this. Then reburn and extend the thin line under the arms to further define the arms. Now burn in the decorative accents to a dark brown or black color using a writer pen tip. The stars. Darkly burn in the nose, irises, and around the edges of the eye using a writer pen tip. Then burn in the decorative accent dots. Afterwards, apply a layer of tiny tan dots over the surface of the star. Apply more dots in areas that are in shadows and fewer on the face, upper arm, and along the right edge of the star. Burn in the decorative dots on the held star. Then apply a layer of the tiny dots over the surface. Burn more dots along the bottom of the star. Apply a lot fewer dots in the center and along the top of the star. The star on the right receives the same treatment as the star on the hat. Apply a layer of tiny dots over the surface of the star, making the upper edges paler in color. Burn in the last star using the same steps we used on the others. Burn in the facial features and apply a layer of tiny tan dots over the surface of the star. Burn fewer dots along the upper edges of the star. The snow. Rotate the board and burn a wide, dark tan line or band of color above the lines on the snowy hills. Rotate the board back and extend the color a little ways from the dark tan line. How far you extend the color is your choice. I am using a combination of circular motion and uniform strokes for this. The uniform strokes are kept near the base or bottom of the hills to darken up areas. The circular motion is used to let the color softly fade away as I get closer to the top of the hills. Darken up the snow in front of the star that crashed. Then burn a thin line between the snow and the star to help define where one ends and the other begins. The branches. After a little experimenting, I discovered that it works well to burn a dark line around each pine needle and then fill in the pine needle to a dark brown or black color. Also, burn a dark line around the edges of the snow. I recommend using a writer or a small ball pen tip for this. Have the heat set on your burner just to the point where you get a brown burn result. Switch to a shader pen tip and burn along the bottom edges of the snow. Make sure your burner is set to get a tan burn result. I am using circular motion and uniform strokes as my burn methods. Now repeat the process on the right branches. Begin by burning in the pine needles to a dark brown or black color using a writer pen tip. The color does not need to be uniform, as a little variety is good. Plus, the branches won't receive a lot of attention anyway. Then switch to a shader and burn along the bottom edges of the snow. Like before, I am using a combination of circular motion and uniform strokes. Adding color. Begin by applying a layer of light yellow over the entire surface of the stars with the exception of the whites of the eyes. I am using Polychromos light yellow glaze. Then switch to yellow ochre and color along the shadowed areas on the stars. This would be the areas we applied more dots to. Color in the eyes on the stars with white and color in the highlights on the eyes of the snow lady. Next, I used Lilac by Prismacolor and applied it over the surface of the hat, the scarf, and the mittens. The next color I used was Grade Lavender by Prismacolor, but with this one I just colored the hat and the scarf. After every application of color, I blend over it using a blending stump. I'm only going to show it this one time, but be aware that I am doing this. Then I used Process Red by Prismacolor and applied it to the cheeks on the Snow Lady. I felt that it was a little too dark and erased most of it off. Then I reapplied it and then tried to soften and lighten the color using an eraser. Here's how it looked after I was done and called it quits with the colored pencils. Lastly, I added a metallic glaze over the stars and the Snow Lady. I began by mixing up a small batch of gold. This was done by mixing a tiny amount of Pearl X Sparkle Gold pigment with a little bit of glossy varnish. Then I applied a light layer over all of the stars. Despite mixing up such a small amount of glaze, I still ended up tossing out the majority of it because you don't need very much. Afterwards, I mixed up a small batch of pearlescent white. Again, this was done by adding a small amount of pearlescent white pigment to the glossy varnish. A very thin layer of pearlescent white was applied over the Snow Lady, but I did not apply it to her eyes, nose, eyebrows, or clothing. Also, I removed the majority of the times where I'm reloading the paintbrush because it was unpleasant to watch at this high speed. Here's how my Snow Lady looked after I was done with the metallic glaze. The ugly mess. The last thing I will talk about is the ugly mess I made of the puffballs. I started out using the lilac pencil and coloring over the majority of the large puffballs, the hanging puffballs, and the fuzzy trim on the hat. I immediately disliked it. It just made everything look dingy or grayed out to me. So I had a brilliant idea to use a white pencil to help lighten, blend, and brighten areas on the puffballs. Since I was on a roll of bad ideas, I followed up with black cherry and colored over the lines on the puffballs. I ended up really disliking this ugly mess, so I erased all of it off of the board. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and found the information informative. On my website, Pyrography Made Easy, I have the written version of the tutorial along with a free pattern that you can download. I will put a link to that in the description below. Now, as I mentioned before, the artwork is based on a drawing by Happy Angel Drawings. She has a YouTube channel, and I will put a link to that in the description below too. Well, thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you next week.